Welcome to the Community Voice. I'm Fara Sax. Joining me today is Leo Toledo. He is the founder and CEO of Masterminds Consulting. I like that. Thank you for waving. A Sandler training center. This is his second of 8 episodes, and today we'll be discussing from his sales tidbits for salespeople. Our topic is bonding and rapport with prospects. It seems like it's a really, really big mountain hurdle to establish this. And first of all, thank you for coming.
It's my pleasure.
And I'm so glad that you're going to be sharing your sales tidbits. So let's get to it. Tell me a little bit about why it's important to establish that bonding and rapport in a sales transaction.
Yes, of course. Well, here's the most important thing is you make an impression, either positive or negative, within a few seconds of meeting someone. So if you begin the meeting not knowing what to say, you feel uncomfortable, maybe you overspeak before asking specific questions, then you limit your ability to create bonding and rapport.
So bonding and rapport is not asking how their kids are and where you're from, and because I know sometimes we get on a Zoom session, for example, and we're waiting for the other parties. Is that a time that we can really establish that bonding and rapport?
You should have done a bit of research prior. Okay, so how long have you worked in this industry? What's next for you? Can you share that with me? Just some open-ended questions that allows them to share something about themselves as it relates to the business.
So before jumping in,
Right.
and then let's walk through when you should focus on when you're selling or when you're communicating the services.
Before you talk about your business and your company and the resources that you can provide them, you want to know about them. Why they're looking at you to begin with. What is it that they're looking at you to resolve for them? Get into examples as to why you're meeting with them. So that way it opens up for them to share stories, success stories, or challenges that then you can pick up on.
So let's role play that for a second. I'm a new business, and you're coming to me, and you want my business. So what would that look like in today's world?
It would sound something like, "Hi, Farah, thank you for meeting us today. I know we scheduled about half an hour. Does that still sound fair with you?" And then from there, I'd say, okay, typically we get invited into organizations like you because you're running into one of 3 scenarios. One could be that your team is not self-sufficient. They don't know how to prospect for new business. Another concern could be that because the competition is increasing out there, now you have to discount to bring in the new services. Now, I don't know enough about you specifically. Does any of that resonate for us to engage further?
So when they answer that, so you would pick up, let's say something from column B, where I'm not getting in front of enough people, let's just say. So what would be the next move down the ladder?
Okay. And so when you say that you're not getting enough people, what do you mean by that?
So you're opening that dialogue for me to have that conversation and to try to get into their pain, really, to
Correct.
find out where their area of where they're coming short, where their sales force is coming up short.
I want to hear stories. I want to know what's going on. I want to see where is there a relation between why we're meeting and then the issue that you're experiencing with your team not getting in front of enough prospects. Give me an example. How long has that happened for? Okay, well, why is it happening for that long? What have you done to try to fix it? And from what you've tried to fix, did it work? And if it did not work, well, why didn't it work?
In the perfect world, I guess that would really be something. Yeah, I want to hear your stories, and they're going to share that. But in the reality is, there's a roadblock. I know that from my own business is a roadblock. I don't know if I can trust you yet.
Okay.
I don't know if what you bring to the table is something I want to indulge in, and I want to give you enough information. So how does a salesperson overcome that obstacle, that block, that
Right. That's a great question. And we have a rule in Sandler that says when you're under attack, fall back. Because clearly if somebody pushes you, well, excuse me, I'm not comfortable enough to share that with you. I have to now fall back and say, forgive me, did I say something wrong? Or what did I just do to provoke you to feel that way or to say that? And then typically when I bring that up, now I'm essentially addressing the resistance right away. I won't say, or I won't advise, oh, you know what, forget about it, let's carry on. Because essentially you brought that up for a reason. I don't want to put it under the rug. I want to bring it up because that's how you establish bonding and rapport. See, bonding and rapport allows you to be open, transparent, and whatever agenda or whatever hidden story you don't want to share, I have to be skilled enough to say, look, for me to be able to determine if I can be a resource for you, that's the reason why I'm asking you these questions. However, it seems that maybe I shouldn't ask you these questions. And then now if I ask that, what do you think they're going to say?
They're either going to give you the information or they're going to even pull back even further. And then you have your answer that they really don't want help.
Precisely. Now, if they pull back even further, then again, I'll say, I'm confused. What just happened? You see, I'm not going to get ahead of them and already assume, well, you're uncomfortable, so let me not bring that up again. No, if you are uncomfortable, well, share that with me, because what I'm here to determine if I can be a resource for you and if what I have you're actually looking for, because chances are you may not be looking for what I have to offer you. So let's discuss it.
Yeah, and it's a discovery. And I find that myself as a salesperson and in my industry, sometimes we rush the process. We want to get to the finish line. And if we don't find out what their pain is, what their needs are, and we just rush to that finish line, we never really accomplish and let them speak their truth, their needs. I was told you have one of these, two of these, use them accordingly. So that's the hardest thing is to fill that air.
Right.
You want to fill the air, but I think, like you're saying, it's the pullback.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you regroup too as a salesperson. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, of course. We have a rule in Sandler that there's a 70-30 relationship between you and the prospect that you're talking to.
A 70-30 relationship.
Right.
Okay.
And so the 70-30 relationship means that if you have a 1 hour meeting, 70% of that hour is the prospect talking. And it's 30% the sales professional talking. And the talking that the salesperson is doing is really asking questions on everything that's going on in the business and why is it relevant for us to even work together.
So in other words, as a salesperson, really you just keep your goodie bag, your Felix the cat, all your little tricks in the bag. And you don't talk about that. You don't discuss that until you've really found out what the needs of the client are. Mm-hmm. And it covers all industries. It's not just advertising. It covers every industry. It could be security, restaurants. You cater to that as in your trainings, don't
Correct.
you?
Yeah. Instead of sharing how you do it, what you do, what differentiates you, you want to first find out, well, what are they looking for? Why are they looking for that? What has been their experience looking for that? Because I want to tie my expertise, I want to tie my services to whatever they tell me, not me assume that what I do is what they're looking for, because then I'm lacking the bonding and rapport.
And we might be on two different pages at that point.
Absolutely.
We're talking oranges or apples. You're talking digital. I'm talking print. You're talking
right.
Doesn't match. So therefore, we will not be successful in that sales process unless we discover and uncover what's
Correct.
going on in the business.
Absolutely. So I'll give you an example. If I'm doing cold calls, right?
Oh, I love cold calls, Leo. Don't you? We just were talking about it before we came on.
I think cold calls are great. I mean, I think they put you in front of the person that you need to talk to, and it's immediate, yes or no.
And it's also the biggest learning curve. I remember when I came to community newspapers 22 years ago. I was just a mere babe. But the publisher said and I had all these questions. He says, go do 100 calls, cold calls, either walk in or call them. You'll have all your answers at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Bingo.
It's the real world. It's the business world. It's getting your boots on and fighting through the trenches. You can learn the education, you can learn the scripts, you can do all the planning and the preparing. But when you're live and you're in front of the prospect and they say, well, why did you walk through the door? Well, here is why I walked through the door. I don't know. Does that make sense? Should we connect? Because if not, I'll be more than happy to just walk out the door. You decide.
And it's interesting because you're really you're like really standing on your own strength at that point. It's like, I don't need this. It seems like you're really owning your own strength and not having to depend on them to say yes or no.
Correct.
And that really elevates you in their eyes, probably.
Equal.
And that's the footing that we want, is that equal, parallel communication.
Stature, of course. Right, because what happens is that sometimes salespeople think, if they're talking to a business owner, that, well, he's a business owner and I'm only a salesperson, so I have to in some way do what he says. However, what you don't know is that what he's looking for, you have. So you both are equal. So a statement could be like, well, typically when we work with individuals like you, here's what they tell us. Here's how they're successful in what we've done for them. However, that may not be what you're looking for, is it?
So in other words, you're telling a third-party story. So the onus is not on them. You're relating it, but it's not basically about them. But really,
Absolutely.
it is.
Correct. Right. Now,
but it's taking them off the hot seat.
Right. Because look, I sell advertising services. I have a plethora of successful companies that receive, I don't know, just for the sake of round numbers, 10 qualified leads coming in through the office. I can say something like, well, Farah, you may not want 10 new leads a week, do you? And then if you say, well, I do. Okay, well, are you receiving that already? And then let's say you say, no, I'm not. Okay, so then what is it that you want us to do for you?
So you're finding the expectations of what they want from you.
Exactly.
Interesting. What other techniques have you found that has worked, and what would you recommend other than what we've talked about so far? When we're trying to build that rapport, that bonding.
We have in Sandler that we use is called DISC. Mm-hmm. DISC is a communication tool, kind of like a personality assessment, where it allows you to understand how people prefer to communicate, how they prefer to make decisions.
So this is like a language that's not spoken.
Absolutely.
So it's all okay. So walk me through that.
And it's a great aspect, because once you really get good at DISC, then you know what words to use. Like, for example, if you're an engineer, right? Engineers are very methodical. They're very systematic. They love process. They love structure. So when you use words like structure, like data, like analytics, because engineers typically deal with numbers, that attracts them. So immediately when you meet an engineer and you start using those kinds of words, they relate to it because that's their preferred method of communicating. So
understandable. So we have to do our homework. Sales people have to do their homework. Mm-hmm. Knowing the industry, knowing the communicator, probably through LinkedIn or any of the social medias, and finding out about who you're going to be speaking with. Mm-hmm. Or is it just when I get in touch with you and I are having that conversation? Is it immediate, or is it something that you really have to research?
I think it's gradual. You certainly have to research beforehand. However, if you don't have the ability to research beforehand and you go into a meeting or you go into the office, you can pick up their preferred method of communicating. You know, are they employee centric? Do they love the culture? Are they supportive? Are they patient? You know, those types of words and conversations can come up just based off of the way that they have their decor in their office, because again, it comes natural to them. So for example, if you are an I in the DISC spectrum, I is the extrovert. I is the one that's friendly, loud. He'll be the one, for example, that instead of him or her asking for the secretary, yes, call him in, he'll walk out and greet you. Hey, you want to see the office? Here, let me show you around. And so all of a sudden now that individual, that is the I preferred communication style, you can be more friendly. You can talk about stories. You can talk about family, because they appreciate and they're open that way. So that just immediately allows you to build that rapport, again, that likability and that trust, because it is our job to create that as we're meeting someone and as we continue evolving.
Interesting. That's great. That's great. And I love this. This is the I'm not okay, you're okay, Sandler Rule. So let's talk about that, because I think that's brilliant when we're going into a prospect and we're trying to, establish that bonding and rapport.
Mm-hmm. Sandler used to say, you always want to have a prospect preserve their dignity, right? And what he meant by that is, in a sales call, you want to make the prospect more okay than how you are, right? And another rule that's similar to that is selling is not for getting your needs met. So I guess before I
Say that again slowly.
Selling is not for getting your needs met.
For not getting your needs met.
So when I say that to
Brilliant.
you, what do you think comes to mind?
What comes to my mind? That it's all about you. It's not about me.
Right.
And that if I need to go to a psychologist if I need my needs met through what I'm doing. Absolutely. I need to make them feel okay. They're safe.
Correct.
Right?
They're safe.
Okay.
They're safe. It's not about me. I don't need to share with you my success, my track record, my high degree of clients that are successful, because that's about me. And that plays no relevance in the person I'm talking to, because it's about them. And so when we say it's not about getting your needs met, it's not about, let me show you how it is. Let me show you what I know. Let me show you how I've been successful being a sales rep, or why I'm the top producer, because that creates a disconnect between you and the prospect, and it makes them feel not okay. So that's the whole idea behind, well, I'll give you an example which could happen often. You walk into a meeting and the person says to you, so tell me about yourself. And if you're not careful, that could be a trap, because, oh, well, of course, I'll tell you about myself. And now here I am sharing all these things that I'm assuming are important to them. Whereas what you should reply, and gently, you have to be very nurturingly, when they say, well, tell me about yourself. Certainly I will. I guess before I share about me, why don't we focus on you first? Are you comfortable with that?
It's interesting. Throughout this whole process, you keep asking them for permission. You keep asking them if they're okay. I mean, from the beginning, whether we're meeting here for a certain amount of time, would you feel comfortable to tell me? And even to this moment where so you're really checking in with them emotionally.
Correct. I need buy-in. It's always buy-in. Is it okay if we talk about this? Okay, then we talk about it.
Buy-in being permission.
Mm-hmm. Right. Is it okay if we talk about this? Yes. Is it okay if we talk about money? Is it okay if we talk about expectations? And then I say it. So for example, if something comes up where you want to question what they just said, you can say something like, Farah, is it okay if I ask you something that I just observed? And then let's say you say yes. I'll say, you know what? I feel uncomfortable. Never mind. And then I take it away. You know what? Never mind. And typically,
please tell me what it was.
Well, and so the idea behind that, again, it's a strategy, but it's a noble strategy, because lots of times people don't want to be open with you. So when you say, look, you know what? Never mind. Then you typically can say something like, no, go ahead, tell me. And then now, when you said this, what did you really mean by that? You meant this, didn't you? And now all of a sudden, I gently brought up whatever resistance, whatever objection came up, but I asked you for permission before I brought it up.
Interesting. And how do we make ourselves more likable to increase that bonding? What do we need to do as salespeople? No matter the cross of the industry, it doesn't matter.
Right. Look, the best strategy that I have found, that I learned a long time ago, is be a good note taker, right? So, Farah, is it okay with you if we take notes, or if I take notes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. And so then we start the dialogue. That sounds important. I'll make a note of that. Okay. Then we keep having a conversation. You say something else. That sounds important. Let me take a note of that. And I keep going through that sequence until essentially the meeting is almost over. And then now I want to paraphrase, or I want to restate what we just talked about. So Farah, we have about 10 minutes left. Can I share with you what I've gathered so far? Yes. Okay. 1 through 10. Does that sound accurate? That I understand what you've said correctly? Okay. Now here's what I'm hoping we accomplish in our next meeting. And then now I lay the expectation of what the next meeting is going to look like based off of our first meeting and the agenda that we've just basically gone over to cover in our next meeting.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Note taking.
Yes.
Note taking during a sales call. Does it also buy time for a salesperson to really collect their thoughts? Can you use it to really slow your tempo down and not speed ahead and use two of these and one of these at the appropriate time?
Right. Of course. That's the whole idea. Because when I go through my notes, let's say I land on number 4 when you said price is a factor. And I know that in this meeting, we already covered that price is going to be a factor. Before I leave the meeting, I want to hit on that point. Say, Farah, one thing you did mention to me is that price is a factor. Now, the decision criteria typically encompasses price, expectation, willingness, all these criterias. Where does price fall along those 4? Is price number 1? Because what I want an emphasis that if price is the only one, then I'm going to say, okay, I have a concern. You might say, okay, what's the concern? Well, we're never low bid, or we're never the least expensive. Now, all these other areas of focus, reputation, quality, communication, that's all wonderful. We will commit to that delivery. However, that aside, you keep bringing up price. I'm concerned about that because we're not going to be the cheapest. So is it over? What should we do at this point?
So at that point, you really just pulled back again and you just laid it out. You're disqualifying at this point. You're saying to them, maybe not.
Right.
You're taking it away. You're taking away the candy.
Right.
Yes? Or is it a way for you to move forward? Or a way for them to communicate what the real problem is?
Bingo.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me what's going on. I want you to tell me how this looks like in your eyes. We've just sat here for 45 minutes. You've brought up 10 things that appear to be very important to you. Here, I've just laid them out for you. Now, from all of these, the one that I want to ask you of, if it's okay, is pricing. Can we cover that for a minute? And then now I cover what my concern is about the price. Because if I'm selling expensive and I'm proud of being expensive and we have a litany of successful customers, I can't tell him that or her that. I have to say, well, they appreciated the investment amount because of all these other things that we're able to do for them. However, that might not be important to you. Is it? And then now hear what they're going to say. Because what I want throughout my bonding and rapport phase is I want them to tell me what they think, what they feel, their success stories, their challenge stories. They're the ones that are telling me the roadmap. I'm not telling them what's expected of them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely. So they're really leading the conversation.
They're leading the conversation. Yes.
So in the time we have left, tell me what you want to tell me. Tell me what you want to tell me that we haven't covered yet, or even how you approach businesses for your services throughout the community. You're a local guy, Palmetto Bay.
It's a great question for me and for companies that are local. Their team is not self-sufficient. They don't have a common language that they all speak. So if they have 10 sales professionals, they don't all have a systematic approach to their services.
So it's the same thing as when we're going out for prospects. We're not speaking the same language.
Correct.
So how do you get them on board to be speaking the same company's mission language?
Well, I get invited in. I either do a workshop for them. I either come in and run a sales meeting for them. And immediately what I like to do is I always like to role play, because role playing is real life scenario. And typically I always begin my sales meetings with, okay, who wants to volunteer a problem that they're experiencing out in the field? I'm
sure everybody jumps up and
it's immediate. Okay, I got one for you. Okay. I write it down on the board.
That's all the extroverts in the room.
Yeah, right. All right. The S's are the ones that just kind of stay quiet. I write the issue on the board. Okay, give me the example or give me the scenario. And I don't even say, okay, I'll be the buyer, you be the salesperson. I just get into the salesperson role immediately. Okay, you're the buyer, I'm the salesperson, let's go. And then immediately I just basically demonstrate how to communicate, how to be effective at communicating, because selling is communicating. Yes, selling is attitude, and selling is your belief system and your accountability. Of course, it does encompass that. More than that, it's communicating. How do you communicate? Do you communicate calmly, swiftly? Do you comprehend what the person you're in front of, what they're saying? And if you do, how do you comprehend? So it's very specific to learning how to communicate. And if you communicate consistent across the board, then your forecasting or your revenue projections are consistent, because not everyone is speaking the same language. They're not going out by the seat of their pants. Okay, my experience has led me to believe this, so I'm going to do it this way. That doesn't work.
Interesting. So this process is a long process. It's not like you can wake up one morning and I'm done, I'm successful, I'm ready for all this. It's really a trial and error. It's learning the language, learning what you're looking for, and being able to have really a roadmap from A to B to C to D to success, or to the ability to know that maybe I need to walk away, that they're not my customer.
Correct.
So it's basically checking your ego at the door, making them feel okay, establishing that what their needs are, speaking less, listening more. What other takeaways can we provide?
Ask great questions. Ask questions about them, and ask questions as to how it relates to their past experience. Okay, when you talk about marketing services, what has worked for you? Thank you for sharing. What hasn't worked for you? You want to get both sides of the coin, because one is, okay, if this has worked for them, well, now I know what's worked for them. So I have that in the back of my mind. If I ask them, well, what hasn't worked for you? And they tell me their frustration on what hasn't worked, well, now I know not to bring up what hasn't worked for them. Because if I do bring up what hasn't worked for them, they're going to say, well, didn't you hear me when I said that it did not work for us? So why are you going to propose or discuss the same thing?
It's wonderful. Wonderful. Bonding and rapport. I think we've established bonding and rapport between us, between our audience. Leo Toledo, thank you so much for joining me in the studio today. And we have a third series that's going to be magical. I know it will be, what the topic that we're going to be discussing, and it's so helpful. And I appreciate you being with me today.
Thank you for having me. It was fun. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining me on The Community Voice. Have a great day.